Quickfill gasoline is made right here in America. United Refining Company, who operates Quickfill, refines its gasoline from North American crude oil in Warren, Pennsylvania. When you buy United Refining Company gasoline at Quickfill, you keep jobs and businesses in America, and you keep American families strong. You don't need to send your money overseas when you buy gasoline. Buy American-made gasoline at Quickfill. Quickfill, driving America.
You have been called
to do good,
to feed the hungry,
to love with action,
to be a light in the darkness,
to love your neighbor,
to teach wisdom,
to walk humbly,
to love mercy,
to care for the least of these.
Will you accept the call?
This is our city.
Our mission.
Visit eriecitymission.org/volunteer to accept the call today.
Welcome to TalkErie.com's Joel Natale Show, Erie, Pennsylvania's daily podcast. Every day, we tackle the biggest issues that the Erie, PA region faces. Stay informed and involved as we advance the narrative of Erie. Now, here's Joel Natale.
You might remember back last October and November, this studio and these microphones were inundated with conversations about the national election from all over the country and literally all over the world. We had Irish television here. We had a conversation with CBC Radio on Election Day. We had the Italians here. Well, the Japanese have come, and to talk about that and that continued interest in Erie County as a bellwether is Dr. Jeffrey Bloodworth. He is a political science, right?
Political historian.
Political historian and also professor at Gannon University. Good to see you, sir.
Great to be here.
I appreciate it here. So, all right. So tell us the backstory of this is NHK. This is I've heard of this network. It's a pretty big deal in Japan, you know.
Yeah, it's their PBS. It's their only public television station, just like us.
Yeah.
And they are apparently, their audience cannot get enough information about Donald Trump. This is going to be their 6th documentary about Donald Trump and American politics of the past year.
Oh, my goodness. So what do you think? Again, they have interesting tastes. That's where some of our crazy game shows come from originally from Japanese television. But what do you think it is about Trump? Is it the pop starness of him? I mean, the American Idol him?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of the Japanese kind of zaniness in pop culture. But, you know, we are, since World War II, like the big brother. I mean, you know, we matter so much, not just in Japanese kind of economics and Japanese politics, but just culturally. Mm-hmm. You know, the producers and writers kind of joked, but were serious, and they said, we pay more attention to your politics than ours. And I like interesting conversations with them about Senate races in Kentucky and Mississippi, right? I mean, like really, like
they had deep level understanding of what was going on in Kentucky, for example.
Yes, absolutely. It was just really interesting. Like, you know, wow. Normal Americans are not.
I was
going to
say, well, what is going on, Dr. Bloodworth, in Kentucky? I mean, they obviously they're replacing Mitch McConnell, right? I mean,
yeah, and the question is Andy Beshear, the popular Democratic governor, going to run for the Senate, and which I don't think is likely. I mean,
you don't think?
No, he's going to run for president. You know,
he's on the A list for president.
Yeah, I think so. Or
with the Maryland governor, right? Wes Moore.
Yeah, I mean, who was an all-star, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, new young faces who were not anywhere near Washington D.C. during the Biden years, yes. Especially the last Biden year. I mean, that like if Democrats don't do that, then they have no chance at winning. Right? I mean, it has to.
While we're on it, let's just stay with that short list. Cory Booker still on that list? Senator Booker, who also called in on the show, by the way.
Did he really?
Yes.
Look, a wonderful person, but I think any Democrat who has spent more than 10 minutes in Washington, D.C. in the past 10 years has no chance.
That is a shocking statement.
What we know now from Jake Tapper's book and others about Joe Biden, if you are a senator or a House member, if you're not Dean Phillips, right? The only Democrat who had the nerve to say the thing that was true. You can't run for president. I mean, I think you'd be laughed out of a Democratic caucus. The Democrats I speak to they already knew this.
Yeah.
Washington's always the last to know. But this is an anti-establishment moment. And especially, Pete Buttigieg, how's he going to run? And the first question is going to be, well, is Jake Tapper's book true about President Biden?
What did you know and when did you know it?
Yeah, and why didn't you say anything? How can you, for 8 years, the Democrats are saying that Republicans were too afraid to say the true thing about Trump in public, right? At least what they said to be true. And then Democrats turned around and did the same thing, right? That is the meta issue already of the 28 election on the Democratic side. Wow. And I think that means, this is a non-Washington moment, and Democrats always do better when they nominate somebody from outside of D.C. Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Gretchen Whitmer, Michigan, still on that list?
Sure, she's not a creature of Washington. So, and she has real political skills.
Right.
Jay
Pritchard, what is it? Illinois. Yeah.
Is this really a billionaire moment? I don't.
That's true. How many billionaires do we want in the White House?
On the Democratic side,
yes.
Maybe he can self-fund. Mm-hmm. He wasn't in D.C., but he spent time with Biden. He's an insider's insider. And it's the same question. Why didn't you say anything? Because, Biden, by all accounts, was fine up until, 2024 or so, and then he fell off a cliff, physically.
Yes.
I've talked to people who had meetings with Biden, and they say, in those meetings, largely speaking, he was generally fine. But give me a break. He couldn't do the public stuff that a president has to be able to do. And
you have to be able to defend your own policies.
Yeah, you think.
But the bar is low. So one more. Is this Gavin Newsom's make or break moment right now with what's going on in L.A.?
In Gavin Newsom's mind, a California liberal is going to run in 2028 for the Democratic nomination and beat the Republicans. How is Gavin Newsom going to come to Western Pennsylvania and talk about deer hunting? Leave it to the Democratic Party to do that. People who think that Gavin Newsom is the answer, what is the question? He might be a fine governor in California, but California is not America, right? Where Democrats struggle, they're getting destroyed in small towns in rural America, and the only way they become a national party, right, is to nominate somebody who can come to Western Pennsylvania. I'm writing a chapter in a book. Bill Clinton, when he came here in 1992, they did a bus tour of the Rust Belt, right?
Yes.
So compare this to Kamala Harris, who came here and had a great event at the Erie Insurance Arena, right? Great event. Mm-hmm. Bill Clinton came to Erie, Pennsylvania, stayed the night on Upper Peach, went to church at the Methodist church in downtown. The night before, he stayed up till 2:30 in the morning shaking hands at an event. They got on the bus, they drove to Meadville, and then they drove to Grove City. And I interviewed the campaign manager, and every time he saw a crowd of people lining the road for their caravan, he made the bus driver stop.
Wow.
That's what Democrats, that's what any politician needs to do to win Western PA. Donald Trump does that. He went to Butler, right? He goes to Johnstown. What do Democrats do? Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, and they do a big event here in Erie, but you know what, the Clinton playbook, that still plays.
And he still, when Bill Clinton came in the fall, he still noted how important that moment was for him and his campaign. And he tried to duplicate it for Hillary, I want to say maybe even the primary in 2008, didn't he? But for certainly in 2016.
In 2016, they tried to reprise it, and look, Hillary...
Because we were like the last stop, like late at night, the night before Election Day,
Yeah, Hillary did, she didn't come to Erie, right?
No,
they did the bus tour, but what they needed to do was the 79 corridor, and just people were literally lining the road with candles. At the end of the evening, when Clinton did the bus tour, thousands of people were at the hotel waiting for him. All organic, right? Unplanned. I mean, and the point is
there's
that
not even cell phones back then.
Yeah. And the point is that, you know, these hyper controlled campaigns, and Kamala Harris, her team, I think she ran as good of a campaign as she could, but they never let her loose. The plan was for her to come to Erie the night before the Democratic convention, and she was going to fly from Erie to Chicago, and that was Celebrate Erie Day. And they backed out, and they did a hyper-controlled event that literally, like, you couldn't get into in Western PA. And I always think, like, her Erie insurance event, everybody in that building was going to vote for her.
Right.
If she came to Celebrate Erie, right? I mean, that's how you win. You talk to people who aren't going to vote for you. Isn't that the point?
Right. Well, and again, they're going to be trying to pick apart that campaign for decades to come. We got on this because the Japanese are analyzing this to such an nth degree, and are they fascinated? Are they appalled? I mean, what are some of the emotions that the Japanese establishment are having with this? Not that we really care, but maybe we should a little bit.
I wouldn't have participated in a documentary that was going to cast the Rust Belt and Erie in a bad light. And so the producer, she's American-based. She went to college at West Virginia University.
Oh, cool.
So she knows our region. And we had a great conversation. And this was all about not, because this is what the media does, right? I mean, if you don't like Donald Trump, how can he win? Let's try to paint his supporters in the worst possible light. And what they wanted to do is, you know, Donald Trump's the president. Let's come to Western PA and find, you know, and talk to the people who vote for him.
Yeah.
And they want to understand, right? Not to take a stand one way or the other against Donald Trump. And so, you know, I took them to the 12th Street corridor, and you see how we are reinventing ourselves. But you can also see how, you know, a lot of people have lost their jobs, right, and have been ground down by, you know, the creative destructive forces of free trade.
Yeah.
And, you know, we all know that this is a huge source of Donald Trump's popularity in Western PA. And so they wanted to come see that, and we took them on a tour of that, and they took some footage. We went down to Corey, and we talked to a group of citizens I meet with once a month, and just to find out what's going on in the Rust Belt. What is the allure of Donald Trump, so they can help their viewers understand someone this is not George Bush, this is not Bill Clinton, this is not Barack Obama. He's very different.
Yeah.
It's shocking to the Japanese.
Yes.
And so they want to understand. I mean, this is the 5th or 6th documentary that this team has done.
It's remarkable. You know, what must blow their minds is it's not just Erie County. It's not just Pennsylvania. It is the 7 swing states that all went for Trump. I mean, have they unpacked that? How have you unpacked that data?
I just spoke to a county chair of the Democratic Party in Western PA yesterday, and she had access to some data. And what jumped out to her is the 19-point gap between male and female voters in Gen Z. And what this Democratic woman told me is that the 24 election is men versus women, and this is an existential problem for Democrats, is that Democrats are increasingly being seen as the party, not just of professionals, but, you know, professional women. Mm-hmm. And that in and of itself is not a bad thing. But what that does is it pushes away working class men. And
right.
it hurts Democrats from, according to her and according to the data, of building a larger tent. And so,
do you think that's singularly, though, of just Trump? Is that something that J.D. Vance is going to be able to grab, or Marco, or somebody like that? I mean, you know, Trump has this power with the working class, don't you think?
Oh yeah, I think the Republicans are going to have an extraordinarily hard time having a Trumpy Republican Party in this coalition. J.D. Vance doesn't have his charisma. Being in the White House does not help you become a better campaigner, right? I mean, Kamala Harris did a pretty good job, but never, ever does being in the White House, president or vice president, help keep you in touch with people, right?
Yeah.
And so I think you're totally correct. I mean, holding this thing together after Trump, I think is a fool's errand. At the same time, Democrats are not destined to win. I mean, my fear is that we're going to continue having two minority parties who offend, a small segment of the electorate every 4 years. Congress, the House, the Senate, the White House keep switching back and forth. What we need is an enduring majority and have some stability and build a political consensus. I mean, that's what we need.
Let's talk a little bit about the results, Doc. As far as Erie County and the smidgen that President Trump won, Erie County was the same exact percentages as he won Pennsylvania. I mean, Erie County really fit that bellwether again.
Yeah.
It's surprisingly shocking to me.
I mean, as a political historian, it's like it's gold to live in the county, right? That is the swing county, the swing state, and we get so much attention. I mean, we had 75% turnout in 2024. I mean, that's like Soviet levels. I mean, generally that's like made up numbers. We had Democratic Party had at least 12 paid full-time staffers, right, in our county. I mean, it's crazy.
So behind the scenes, we had our own press concierge to the Harris campaign. One young woman basically was connected to Shaney and me and constantly texting, and then we had the fella from all of Western PA. I mean, Trump didn't match that, honestly. He had one guy handling three of the big swing states. It was astounding. Hey, do you want to talk to Mark Cuban? Do you want to talk to this one, that one? It's wild.
It was, I was fooled by the Harris campaign's kind of what appeared to be this extraordinarily efficient and well-oiled campaign, and it was in many ways.
Sure.
And the 50-something offices here. The problem, and I talked to a Democratic strategist, and they told me off the record, they were like, the problem was that the Democratic Party, right, will bus in all of these volunteers in the weeks before an election. And the problem is that we have 3,400 counties in America, right? And Democrats have a county chair in about 300 of them. The Democrats lose because they do not invest any money in grassroots organizing.
Wow.
They try to do it all. It's like trying to win a war through dropping bombs, right? As opposed to being on the ground. And it's just politics 101. And I'll tell you, these are Democratic strategists who will tell me this, and they'll say the Democratic consultant class knows this, and they make more money, right? Because they get a cut out of the TV ads and the mailers, right? And so
frustrates the tar out of me. Basically, there's an election industrial complex. And it's all to feed the consultants and the TV producers and the mail houses.
Absolutely. You dig down into this, and it's on the Republican side too.
Absolutely, yeah.
But they're winning, and the Democrats, they know why they lose. I mean, the state party chair of Nebraska, Jane Klebe, who's now the kind of on the DNC as the official representative to state and local parties.
Yeah.
She told me that if she had $100,000, that's all she needs every year, she could hire a couple of staffers, and she said she could make Nebraska competitive for the Democrats. There's barely a Democratic elected official anymore in Nebraska other than Omaha. But that's how little it takes for the Democrats to become competitive.
Wow.
Erie's different, right? The party here is competent. It's well run.
Sure.
It's organized.
Yeah.
And for people who don't want Donald Trump to be president and want to defeat Trumpism, I would argue protests are nice, but the way you do it is the boring drudgery work of organizing and knocking on doors outside of campaign seasons.
Yeah.
Neighbors talking to neighbors about voting for Democrats works. Strangers from Philadelphia coming to Erie and knocking on doors, right? That doesn't work. And everybody knows it, yet that's what the Harris campaign had to do. And again, a lot of credit to her. I mean, she had 100 days.
Sure.
But the National Democratic Party commits political malpractice on an hour-by-hour basis. If they were a dentist, they should have their license pulled. I mean, for folks who are mad about Donald Trump, right, I always think, Okay, fine. You know, you don't want to like Donald Trump. You want to scream at the TV. Fine. You know who you should be mad at? You should be mad at national Democratic elites who know better, but they won't change.
Right.
Barack Obama, remember, right? In 2008, he won Corey, Pennsylvania, 53% of the vote. Why?
Unreal.
Because they organized. Wow. And then, I don't know how many people told me this, you know, the Democratic Party quit trying in rural and small town America. That's why Donald Trump wins.
Even Obama said in 2012, we're putting aside the working class Americans. Hillary barely touched working class Americans.
Yeah, I mean the coalition of the ascendant, as they called themselves, they decided that they didn't need working class people. I mean,
so now they're losing their coalitions. I mean, working class African Americans, working class Hispanics, moved very strong toward Trump, which is a shocker. And then to have these Gen Z males, these 20-something males, move to Trump, had to be like jaw-dropping for the consultants.
In 2020, Donald Trump was very unpopular, at least on my campus, even with the male students. And in 24, he was cool and hip. Democrats don't try to talk to young men anymore. I mean, the Trump campaign ran circles around the Democrats, like the podcast and the broadcast.
Yeah, right.
But all that stuff worked. And
Theo Vaughn, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so
Joe Rogan.
Yeah, all of it. And I mean, Kamala Harris wouldn't go on Joe Rogan. It's like, what are you talking about? Yeah. You got to talk to the voters you don't have.
I think the malpractice thing really suits, you know.
All year round, Frontier Home Products and Design has what you need to make your home comfortable and beautiful. Relax on a new timber tech deck designed by Frontier's experts. A new fireplace from Frontier Home Products Fireplace Gallery adds warmth and serenity to any home. Beauty and versatility at Frontier Home Products and Design Center, 4213 Peachtree, East 5th, next to the Bayfront Highway.
Frontier Home Products and Design Center. Discover a new frontier.
PA contractor number PA039007.
Get paid to drive. Start a new career behind the wheel at the EMTA. If you are looking for a high-paying and rewarding career with full benefits and paid training, stop by or apply online today with the EMTA. Plus, EMTA riders can now enjoy free Wi-Fi on new, clean, and environmentally friendly buses to travel all over Erie County. Visit ridethee.com for more information.
Get on board EMTA. Get on board EMTA. Get on board.
I wanted to get your opinion on the primary election here. Again, primaries pretty much are the election when it comes to the city of Erie, and really what was considered an unprecedented move by the Democratic Party to endorse the challenger to incumbent Mayor Joe Schember, Daria Devlin, which, and again, we heard the explanation that folks wanted a change and in the party, but as you look at history, you don't see that very often, do you?
No, you don't, right? Especially in a one-party city. And you talk to most everybody in Erie, they'll have a Joe Schember story. And they'll always, I mean, when Daria Devlin would talk about Mayor Schember, she would say, you know, I love Joe, right? And everybody likes Joe Schember. I mean, it's impossible to not like him.
I mean, there's no scandals, no major issues, yet the party said, oh, we're going to make a different choice this time.
Yeah, I mean, in an era in which parties almost have no power, I thought, you know, this is a time in which, you know, the party elites, you know, kind of said whether it's popular or unpopular, they were going to try to have some sort of influence. And I think that mattered, especially I thought a low turnout election would help Joe Schember. In fact, it helped the challenger. You know, and so, you know, what does she need? 6,000 votes in order to, you know, if you'd had a larger turnout, have been 35%, name recognition would have won the day. But low turnout made a difference, and that endorsement surely made a difference.
We were even wondering if Sheila Woger would be a spoiler, but in fact, Daria not only defeated the mayor, but overcame the Sheila quotient with over 50% of the vote. She didn't even just have a plurality; she had a majority of the vote.
Yeah, and it was a clear mandate to defeat a well-liked incumbent mayor. I mean, there's construction out here on State Street in the studios. I mean, Erie's in a better place than it was 8 years ago. But you got this sense, talking to people, is that, I wonder how much the Joe Biden effect had, right? I mean, they're both named Joe. They're both in, their 70s. And a sense that, maybe it's time to pass the baton generationally. I wonder how much that played a role for people. And again, in an election where a few hundred votes really mattered. Really, yeah, that Jake Tapper book was out about Biden. It's kind of unfortunate timing. I mean, again, you never know when you're only talking about 25% of the electorate making a decision. There's all kinds of reasoning why somebody would vote the way that they do, right? Yeah, I think there's a real hunger amongst Democrats to turn the page. Maybe enough with the septuagenarians being in political office, right? Mm-hmm. Nancy Pelosi might be the Yoda of Democratic politics. I mean, she got Biden to step down. She's still very effective, but she had the smart sense to no longer be speaker or at least minority leader. Mm-hmm. And I think that's healthy. Yeah. While we're talking Pennsylvania politics, let's talk about Senator Fetterman, because I don't know if he's the Yoda. He is certainly a unicorn. Would you say? I mean, what do you think is going on there? Because he's just I think he's trying to be himself. Is he? Or is this some kind of Braddock persona that he puts on? I don't know. I think, look, I mean, he had this traumatic event. I mean, he has real profound trouble communicating. I think the only thing you can do is to reinvent yourself, right, when you're physically diminished. And he's trying to be authentically himself. It's interesting. It seemed to me that, progressives, Bernie voters always kind of thought they understood who John Fetterman was and his particular views. Mm-hmm. And Fetterman, I don't know, when I would see him speak, he didn't always say a whole heck of a lot in terms of policy. And so people were quite shocked. I think his stance, his very ardent pro-Israel stance, I think shocked a lot of the progressive left. And I mean, why would you talk about what your Israeli policy is when you're running in Pennsylvania? There's no need. And October 7th was so shocking. I mean, it does, I think, force people to have a real visceral reaction to it. Well, even today, this week, he's saying things like any Democrat that is, just kind of being okay with the riots in L.A. need to rethink their policies. That he says there's no room for this kind of craziness, and he's not towing to the orthodoxy, and it seems to play really well though in Western PA. I think John Fetterman has his finger on the pulse of normie Democrats. I mean, say that again. He has the finger on the pulse of normie Democrats, which there is a very wide divide between elite Democrats who run the party, who are progressives and maybe they're right on the issues, but they are out of step. They're further to the left, right, on most every issue than normie Democrats. I mean, this is the problem that Democrats have with their working class non-white voters, who are not nearly as liberal on cultural matters as highly educated white progressives who run the party. I mean, that is, and so John Fetterman, whether he's right or wrong, I mean, he is in tune, right, with the majority of normie Democrats. And I mean, you don't have to like it, but I think that's a reality. And, these what's going on in California now is redounding to Donald Trump's benefit. If the protesters against these ICE raids were more organized and they kept the violent few in check, I don't know, like the civil rights movement did in the 50s and 60s. They sure did. That would play. I mean, this is the problem that the left never fully remembers about the civil rights movement and why it was so successful, is that they were disciplined and organized and they dressed up in middle class clothes. You know what was the only thing more unpopular than the Vietnam War were the Vietnam War protesters. And they were right about the war, but the way that they behaved obscured their issue. Yeah. And, the ICE raids, I think, are appalling and un-American. I also think that, Joe Biden made a huge mistake by not controlling the border. Mm-hmm. But if you want to protest these, you're appealing to somebody in Sagertown, Pennsylvania, not to professors at Yale. And you do that by hewing to mainstream norms of decorum, and you're not. And is it a few people who are violent? Sure, but that's what people see, and you have to keep those people in check, just like the civil rights movement did.
There, when we talk about Fetterman not towing the line. Somebody that, again, is accused of towing the line of the far left is the legacy media. And this is where I'm bringing this around to the international media, because I would think that folks like NHK, or I'm thinking of our friend from Ireland, from Irish television, they're in sync with what is, considered, the coastal media. And so when they see a place like Erie County and, or Western Pennsylvania in general, it's hard for them to make that leap that somebody could think other than what is kind of the narrative coming out of legacy media. And so, to the point of, how do you reset? And I think some of these major corporations who are seeing their stocks go south, they're starting to reset. They say, we have to deal with this guy in the White House. And so you got the Redstone family who owns CBS Paramount saying, let's figure out a way to maybe move to the center, or there's calls for NPR to hire a conservative somewhere on their news team, right? I mean, so talk about the media, I guess.
Yeah,
in general.
I discovered National Public Radio in the late 1980s, and I remember Bill Kristol, who was Dan Quayle's chief of staff, a well-known neoconservative intellectual and policy person, used to do first-person essays in the early 1990s. And I remember I got him confused with the comedian. Mm-hmm. And then they were like, that's Dan Quayle's chief of staff. And I remember thinking, wow, that's a really smart person. I may not agree with everything this person says. Once upon a time, National Public Radio, was not just a liberal bastion. I mean, it had an urban bias.
Sure.
But it has most certainly been institutionally captured by the left. I mean, I think that is just clear as day. And I'm somebody who gives money to National Public Radio.
It makes it an easy target to defund.
Yeah, I mean,
if you had some balance, it would be harder. You'd have more support, probably.
Yeah, no, like National Public Radio, the New York Times, the Washington Post. Look, Donald Trump was so shocking to the political system that it pushed a whole kind of cadre of highly educated folks in academia and journalism to join the hashtag resistance. And as a professor, that's not our job, right? But I mean, higher education has its problems with that, of trying to realize our job is to educate. Our job is not to indoctrinate. And we have our own problems in academia with that. And legacy media, there's a way to cover Donald Trump critically, and that needs to be done, because trying to get rid of birthright citizenship, are you kidding me? This is un-American. But you don't need a journalist to be a cheerleader. Where were the journalists in Joe Biden's last year? Jake Tapper, I'm glad he wrote the book. Where was he?
Yeah, he didn't say a word.
Yeah, I mean, and that didn't exist I thought Joe Biden, of 2020 was, he dealt with the media. He's not as vigorous as he was in 2008. But by 2024, where were they?
Yeah. Wow. You mentioned academia. Our job is to educate, not to indoctrinate. Maybe not in your circle at Gannon, but don't you think that in the Ivies they would disagree with you?
there is an absolute distinction between the Ivy Leagues and a normie academic place like Gannon, right? I mean, make that distinction absolute. Columbia University advertises itself, literally, go to their site. I've written about this, of training activists, and left-wing activists is what they mean. In Columbia's world, conservatives, it's a mental condition. I mean, from their perspective. And, I mean...
And they have what, a 6% acceptance rate. I mean, they're able to thrive in this environment.
Yeah, and it is, and they have gatekeepers. They don't hire conservatives. You could imagine being a conservative at Yale or Columbia. You just keep your mouth shut. I mean, it's like, this is not what academic and intellectual freedom are. And academics, we fell asleep at the wheel. And again, I'm not talking about Gannon, right? I'm talking about elite institutions. And you do have, I have a friend who was hired at the University of Tennessee recently, and they had to create their own special department, basically a department that hires people who are not left of center. Because they, I'm not making this up. University of Florida does this, University of Tennessee. Flagship state institutions.
So we've gotten to, affirmative action just to maybe have a conservative around every once in a while.
And this is a friend of mine, right? He's right of center. Like, his Facebook every day is filled with detesting Donald Trump. He's a libertarian, a very well regarded scholar. But because he's not left, right? University of Tennessee, I forget, it's like the Department of Civics or something. It's a whole institute.
Wow.
But that's what flagship universities are beginning to do, because the left has captured, in the humanities and social sciences, the hiring committees. And you can't, and again, that's not most of academia, right? That's 10%. The rest of academia, a place like Gannon, is not like that. Make that clear. Again, that's...
Unfortunately, though, it's getting thrown, I think all the universities get thrown into this, It's like they're expecting literally to be, Hamas demonstrators, in downtown Erie or something. I don't know.
No, absolutely. I mean, I hear that. And you're like, this, our students at Gannon, they might have an opinion about it. I know that they do. They'll talk to me about it one way or the other. But, they understand that Gannon is a place where you come to study, right? And you come to learn. But Ivy League institutions and elite state flagship, this is not... There's this thing called the Fox News fallacy, that the left believes if it's on Fox News, it's not true. Now, Fox News, we all understand, has a lot of propaganda. But when Fox News talks about the left capturing higher education in elite schools, they are correct. And this is not something that the legacy media is interested in talking about. And so, this is, I think, part of what the left needs to understand. Just because it's on Fox News does not mean it's not true, right? Because Fox does have legitimate journalists, even if it does have a decided, a bent, which now we understand so does the legacy media, and it's only become more so in the last 10 years.
Do you think, we have Dr. Jeffrey Bloodworth with us, do you think that this curiosity about a place like Erie County by the global media and certainly consultants and things like that, do you think that they'll ever get to say, you know what, they're just normie people trying to make a living and raise their kids in a beautiful context? I mean, that's how I think it. We're normal people trying to make a living in probably the most beautiful location on the planet, if you ask me.
We have the greatest summers in the world,
Amen.
Right? We are normie America, right? We're a little bit whiter and we're a little less wealthy than the average American.
That's very true.
But this is normie America. You want to understand America? You come to a place like Erie County. You want to understand academia? Don't go to Yale. Come to Gannon. I mean, it's the same thing. And I would hope that the Europeans or the Japanese who came here during 2024 as well, they walk away knowing that this is, normal America. Because if you only go to San Francisco and New York, which are great places, I mean, that is not what America is, right? I mean, it is a slice of America. I'm not saying that they are not American, right?
Right.
But this is not how you understand the beating heartbeat of this nation.
Talk about 2026. Fortunately or unfortunately, Pennsylvania doesn't have a Senate race coming up here next year, and so it might be kind of quiet around these parts. But I tell you what, that is what 20 months away, and then we're full guns into what's going to be an open presidential election for 2028. Does Erie County still figure highly in all of this?
We matter until we don't. I mean, we are the bellwether. We're going to be on the national radar. Everybody's going to be here again. It's going to be fun. All the candidates are going to actually come here.
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton, I think, showed that mistake. I think Kamala Harris not spending more time here, right? Really spending time in Western PA. I mean, that's what you have to do. I mean, you're going to have the first time since 2008 that a Democrat has actually run a grassroots campaign where they shook voters' hands. I mean, we'll see, right?
Yeah.
If they do it in 28, that'll be 20 years.
Wow.
And that's the Democrat who's going to win the nomination. The person who's going to spend time and shake hands. And
does Iowa and New Hampshire still figure, hugely? I guess for the nomination, right?
Well, the Democrats stupidly decided that Iowa, they didn't want to participate because it's not diverse enough. But the great thing about Iowa is that you have to go into living rooms of normal people and shake normal people's hands and have normal conversations for 6 months. And, political elites, this is what they need. Donald Trump and his, where he goes and talks in these giant crowds.
Yes.
He's doing his own form of testing out his stuff, right? He understands how the crowd reacts. This is an issue I should talk about. And Democrats haven't done that for 20 years by the time it'll be to 28.
Right.
I mean, and so this is why they lose, is because they are, a billionaire from New York City who's barely had anything but a normal life is more in touch with the average American than, Democratic elites. And the only way they get back in touch, I don't know who it is.
Right.
But it's somebody who's going to shake hands and be like Bill Clinton, only in staying up till 2:30 in the morning in a place like Erie, Pennsylvania, and shaking hands.
Yeah.
And
it's shocking to think that somebody like Donald Trump connected with a 22-year-old black male in Erie, Pennsylvania. That's where you wow, how does that happen, right? But he did.
He did. I was walking down 6th Street last summer, and I saw an African-American male, 20-something, riding his bike, and he had a MAGA hat on. And I was like, oh, this is not a good sign for the Democrats. But and I often think, Donald Trump is very good at what he does, but the Democrats are also very, very, very bad at what they do. They lost to Donald Trump, the most unpopular national political figure, 2 times. And that takes some real kind of screw up. And I don't fully understand liberal activists and why they have not yet gotten really angry. And that's why I think Chuck Schumer will lose when AOC inevitably challenges him in the New York primary. I mean, that...
that'll be one to watch.
That's one to watch, and that's what's happening in 26. Is the septuagenarians better watch out.
Dr. Jeffrey Bloodworth, again, Erie playing a huge role in the national political scene. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Okay, thank you.
You've been listening to The Joel Natale Show, Erie, Pennsylvania's daily podcast from TalkErie.com. Subscribe to our show on your favorite podcatcher and get involved by emailing joel@TalkErie.com.